a WikiVidi Documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Sasha Banks. Mercedes Castner Varnado is an American professional wrestler currently signed to WWE on the Raw brand under the ring name Sasha Banks. She previously wrestled on the independent circuit, most notably for Chaotic Wrestling, where she once held the Chaotic Wrestling Women's Championship. Between WWE and their developmental brand NXT, Banks has had 5 championship reigns, being a former NXT Women's Champion and a record-tying 4-time Raw Women's Champion. Her match against Bayley at NXT TakeOver, Respect on October 7, 2015 was the first women's match to ever headline a major WWE event, the first women's Iron Man match, and the longest women's match in WWE history at the time with a length of 30 minutes. Their match was voted by Pro Wrestling Illustrated as the Match of the Year, with Banks being voted as the Woman of the Year as well, while their NXT TakeOver Brooklyn in August 2015 won the NXT Year-End Award for Match of the Year. In 2016, she and Charlotte Flair became the first women to headline a WWE pay-per-view event and the first to compete in a Hell in a Cell match, the first women to main event Raw in a women's match since 2004, and the first women to win the Pro Wrestling Illustrated Award for Feud of the Year. Early life. Castner Varnado was born in Fairfield, California, and later moved to various places, including Minnesota, to find schools and hospitals for her disabled brother, before settling in Boston, Massachusetts, where she began her professional wrestling career. She went to school online and grew up watching All Japan Women's Pro Wrestling. She is of African American and German descent. Chaotic Wrestling, 2010-2012. Castner Varnado began training at Chaotic Wrestling, based in Woburn, Massachusetts, in 2008. She made her in-ring debut, under the ring name Mercedes KV, on October 1, 2010 in an intergender tag team match, where she teamed with Nikki Roxx in a losing effort to Alexis and Danny E. KV and Roxx quickly formed an alliance, teaming together regularly and accompanying each other to ringside. On October 22, KV lost her debut singles match to Danny E and lost a rematch to him on November 13. On January 7, 2011, KV earned her first victory when she and Roxx defeated Alexis and Mistress Belmont in a tag team match. On February 11, KV took part in a 5-woman gauntlet match to determine the inaugural Chaotic Wrestling Women's Champion, but was unsuccessful. KV continued competing in singles matches throughout the remainder of 2011, and on December 2 she defeated Alexis in a I Quit match to win the Chaotic Wrestling Women's Championship for the first time. KV made her first successful title defense against Barbie on January 6. KV faced Luscious Latasha with the championship on the line on January 27, where KV retained the title. KV successfully defended the championship against Alexis in a rematch. She then successfully defended the championship twice against Nikki Roxx. On June 1, KV defeated Alexis, Barbie and Mistress Belmont in a fatal 4-way match to retain the championship, after which she became the longest-reigning Chaotic Wrestling Women's Champion in history by breaking Alexis's previous record of 182 days. KV went on to defend and successfully retain the championship against Barbie on June 24, against Aida Marie on July 20, and on August 17 against Casey Ray. KV made her final appearance for Chaotic Wrestling on August 18, where she lost to Ivy Fit in a non-title match. On August 18, the Chaotic Wrestling Women's Championship was declared vacant after Castner Varnado signed a contract with WWE, thus ending her reign at 260 days. Independent Circuit Promotions, 2010-2012. On August 8, 2010, KV made her debut in New England Championship Wrestling, teaming with Ivy to defeat the team of Ariel and Sami Lane. She returned to the NSU on September 4, 2011, again teaming with Ivy, defeating Mistress Belmont and Veda Scott. On September 23, KV defeated Mistress Belmont in a singles match. KV once again returned to the promotion on July 14, 2012 at the Red, White and Bruised event, where she was defeated by Adriana by countout. KV, under the ring name Miss Mercedes, debuted for National Wrestling Alliance on November 19, 2010, where she faced Julian Starr in a losing effort. On the following two nights, Mercedes defeated Shay Callie and Nick Fahrenheit in singles matches. Mercedes began to feud with the Great Cheyenne, losing to her on several occasions. On August 9, she wrestled her last match for the NWA, defeating Arlene in a singles match. NXT 2012-2015. In June 2012, Kastner Vinado participated in a WWE tryout camp, and on August 18 it was announced that she had been signed to a contract. She was assigned to NXT, WWE's developmental territory, where she adopted the ring name Sasha Banks, and made her televised debut on NXT on December 12, losing to Paige. Banks' first televised win on NXT was on the January 23, 2013 episode against Alicia Fox. Banks then entered a storyline where she received letters from a secret admirer, who was eventually revealed to be Audrey Marie, who returned and attacked Banks on the February 20 episode of NXT, due to Marie's jealousy of Banks' success. Marie went on to defeat Banks in a match later that episode. Banks' feud with Marie came to an end on the April 3 episode of NXT, when Banks teamed with Paige to defeat Marie and Summer Rae. On the June 19 episode of NXT, Banks competed in the NXT Women's Championship tournament to determine the inaugural champion, but lost to Rae in the first round. After weeks of influence by Summer Rae to make herself relevant, Banks was defeated by the NXT Women's Champion Paige on the September 11 episode of NXT, after which she attacked Paige after the latter attempted to console her, leading to Banks' turn into a villainess. 2 weeks later on NXT, Banks defeated Bayley, while accompanied by Rae. After the match, Banks cut a promo with Rae and debuted a new gimmick as The Boss. Banks and Rae, who dubbed themselves the Beautiful, Fierce Females, faced Paige and Emma on the October 16 episode of NXT, where they emerged victorious. On the November 13 episode of NXT, the BFFs defeated Bayley and Charlotte in a tag team match, when Charlotte attacked Bayley and aligned herself with Banks and Rae. In mid-January 2014, as Rae moved up to WWE's main roster, Banks and Charlotte began a rivalry with Bayley, who had aligned herself with Natalya, and lost in both singles and tag team matches. On April 6, Banks made an appearance at WrestleMania 30 as a part of Triple H's entrance. In May, Banks entered a tournament for the vacant NXT Women's Championship, defeating Bayley in the first round, but losing to Natalya in the semi-finals. On the July 3 episode of NXT, Banks and Charlotte defeated Bayley and Becky Lynch, only for Charlotte to leave Banks after the match to get attacked by Bayley, with Banks officially disbanding the BFFs in a backstage segment later that night. On the August 14 episode of NXT, Banks lost to Bayley in a match to determine the number one contender to the NXT Women's Championship. At NXT TakeOver, Fatal 4-Way on September 11, Banks attacked Bayley after her title match with Charlotte, before Charlotte stopped her. Becky Lynch turned on Bayley and aligned herself with Banks on the October 23 episode of NXT after Banks defeated Bayley in a singles match. Banks promptly began feuding with NXT Women's Champion Charlotte, leading to a match between the two at NXT TakeOver, Revolution on December 11, with Charlotte's championship on the line, which Banks lost. Banks received a rematch on the December 25 episode of NXT, where she was once again unsuccessful. Banks first appeared on WWE's main roster on the December 30, 2014 episode of Main Event, where she lost to Charlotte in a non-title match. On January 21, 2015, Banks received another title match against Charlotte, which she lost after Becky Lynch attacked Charlotte, causing a disqualification, which led to dissension between Banks and Lynch. On February 11, at NXT TakeOver, Rival, Banks won the NXT Women's Championship by pinning Charlotte in a fatal four-way match that also involved Lynch and Bayley. Banks successfully retained the championship against Charlotte in a rematch on the March 4 episode of NXT, and against Alexa Bliss on March 25 at NXT TakeOver, Unstoppable on May 20. Banks defended and retained the title against Becky Lynch. On the July 8 episode of NXT, Banks teamed with Charlotte to defeat Emma and Dana Brooke, after which Charlotte challenged Banks to an NXT Women's Championship match, which Banks accepted. They had their championship match the following week on the July 15 episode of NXT, in which Banks retained the championship. And the two shared a hug, with Charlotte raising Banks' hand as a sign of respect. At NXT TakeOver, Brooklyn on August 22, Banks dropped the NXT Women's Championship to Bayley, thus ending her reign at 192 days. After the match, Banks celebrated with Bayley and former rivals Becky Lynch and Charlotte. The match was highly praised by critics and would win Match of the Year at the NXT Year-End Awards. On the September 16 episode of NXT General Manager William Regal announced that Bayley would defend the title against Banks in the main event of NXT TakeOver, Respect, in the first ever women's 30-minute Iron Man match in WWE history. At the event on October 7, Bayley defeated Banks, scoring the win with 3 falls to 2 in what would be her last match in NXT. Women's Revolution, 2015-2016. Banks made her official debut on the July 13, 2015 episode of Raw along with Charlotte and Becky Lynch, after Stephanie McMahon called for a revolution in the WWE Divas division and while Lynch and Charlotte allied with Paige, who was feuding with Team Bella. Banks would ally with Naomi and Tamina, who later dubbed themselves as Team BAD, leading to a brawl between the three teams. In her WWE pay-per-view debut on July 19 at Battleground, Banks competed in a triple threat match against Charlotte and Brie Bella, which Charlotte won. Banks went on to defeat Paige twice, first by submission on the July 20 episode of Raw, in a tag team match where Banks teamed with Naomi for the first time, and again on the July 27 episode of Raw in a singles match. After defeating the Divas champion Nikki Bella by submission in a non-title match on the August 17 episode of Raw, Banks participated in the first ever Divas No. 1 Contenders Beat the Clock Challenge match, in which she fought Paige to a time limit draw, and Charlotte was named the No. 1 contender. Following this, Banks rekindled her rivalry with Paige and defeated her twice on the September 7 and 14 episodes of Raw, and fought to a no contest on the September 10 episode of SmackDown. Although she lost in a fatal 4-way No. 1 Contenders match for Charlotte's Divas Championship in November, Banks was not pinned, and she started a winning streak, defeating the likes of Brie Bella, Alicia Fox, and Becky Lynch. After a month off television, Banks returned at the Royal Rumble pay-per-view on January 24, 2016, attacking Charlotte and Becky Lynch after their championship match, showing her intentions to gain the Divas Championship. Prior to a match with Lynch on the February 1 episode of Raw, Banks claimed that she was on her own, signaling that she had moved on from Team BAD only to be attacked by Naomi and Tamina during the match, turning Banks into a fan favorite in the process. The feud between Banks and Naomi and Tamina would continue throughout February, and would lead to a tag team match at Fastlane on February 21, where Banks allied with Lynch to defeat the two. Banks and Lynch went on to compete in 2 matches to determine the No. 1 contender for Charlotte's Divas Championship at WrestleMania 32, with the first bout ending in a draw after a double pin occurred, and the second in a no contest after both Banks and Lynch were attacked by Charlotte. As a result, a triple threat match between Banks, Lynch and Charlotte for the Divas Championship was announced for WrestleMania. At the event on April 3, after it was announced during transmission that the Divas Championship would be withdrawn and it would be replaced with the new WWE Women's Championship, with all 3 women competing for it in the triple threat match, in which Banks was unsuccessful in capturing the new title at her WrestleMania in-ring debut. After a hiatus, Banks returned to WWE television in early June, defeating Summer Rae on Main Event, before reigniting her feud with Charlotte over the WWE Women's Championship after an attack along with Paige on the June 20 episode of Raw. This led to a tag team match the following week on the June 27 episode of Raw, where Banks and Paige scored the victory. Followed by multiple attacks and matches between Banks and Dana Brooke, it was announced that they would face off in a tag team match on July 24 at Battleground, where Banks and her mystery partner Bayley defeated Charlotte and Brooke. Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Would you like to know more?